starting. I am. We'll see if my internet crashes today. I really hope it doesn't, but I am live streaming on Facebook. I don't know how well you can see me because I got the phone flipped around so you can actually read what's going to be on the screen, which is nothing right now. I've got my iPad set up right now because, and actually I need to refresh this. It's the only way I can test things out. So we'll see if it's working here. Let's see. I don't know. I was using my wife's computer to test it out while I'm running it on this laptop right in front of me, and her computer wasn't showing up what needed to show up. So not super pumped about that. Now I'm trying to see if this thing will load at all on an iPad. Oh, it's loading. Loading is good. And there I am. I'm live. Okay, so I'll turn down that volume there, though. And I'm not sure if the chat window is showing up or not. I'm testing out a whole bunch of stuff. So if you're on right now, first of all, if you're on Facebook right now watching this, I can't see your comments, but I will after. So please like or share or heart or anger face or something like that. I'm basically going through a 30-minute webinar live through YouTube Live through a web link for people in the What If project. And yeah, we'll see if everything worked. And I'm just going to hop over and see if hopefully you can still see me. Technology. I promise that for the next one I will be good. I will be good at this. I promise. And where did my window go? I lost it now. This is ridiculous. Anyway, we the webinar today is the 3 reasons why employees underperform and how to correct behavior to increase your team's productivity. And I'm going to try and jump right into sharing the actual thing. Where did it just go again? All right. So if I go here, by the way, your patience is super awesome here. Now we'll go to screen share, application windows, your entire screen. That's only screen 1. I want to see screen 2. Boom, there's screen 2. If I go share, you can see that, which should mean, I'll test this in a second, that if I go here, all right, it's showing up there. All right. Man, again, my apologies for starting off kind of rough, and hopefully on Facebook you can see that stuff there. And if you're actually in the, I've got it live up here too. All right, we are ready to rock. So here we go. So first of all, if you're on the webinar, I'd love you to say hi and test out this chat window thing that I'm doing because it's new. Everything that I'm doing, I've done one webinar before. I did it back in February, I think. And I was testing out this whole using YouTube Live and trying to get everything going. And this is the first time I've got a chat window working, but I'm not sure how good it is. I guess that's one of the things you do when you test things. So now that we're off to a fantastic start, and now that you're like, oh man, Jamie, he's so professional. I was even going to wear a nice shirt today, but I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off, even though everything was ready. So it's kind of unfortunate. My wife was gracious enough to grab me a glass of water because I didn't even have time. I was going to make a coffee, and I didn't. So without further ado, we're going to jump into it. Again, if you can say hi in the chat, that'll let me know that it's working. Tell me where you're from. Maybe that'd be kind of cool as well. I'm going to try and make this as interactive as possible, and hopefully that ends up being more valuable for you. But yeah, we're talking about the 3 reasons why employees underperform. How to increase behavior, how to correct behavior to increase your team's productivity. And as a welcome, I would love to know what you think is the hardest part about managing performance. And again, I don't know if this chat window is actually working. So if you are on, answer that question in the chat. From the feedback that I've already heard, I did a bunch of surveys before actually starting the What If project. And I got a lot of feedback where it's tough sometimes to just get people to do what you want them to do. And that can be frustrating, especially when it comes to common sense. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But sometimes things that seem like common sense to you aren't common sense to the people that you lead. And so sometimes just getting people to do what you want them to do can be actually just very difficult. But some of the other things that are very difficult about managing performance are sometimes when employees um, rebel or have a bad attitude, and you're trying to get them to achieve something because you know it's in their best interest, but they're not buying it. So that's another tough one. And then I think, at least for me in my experience managing people, the toughest was when I wasn't super confident that the person could actually do what I was expecting them to do or what I was asking them to do. So that would be the hardest part for me about managing performance. And just by way of quick announcements, I reckon we're probably going to run a little bit past the 1:30 Mountain Standard time because it took me like 6 minutes to get up and rolling. But for starters, this is part of the What If Project. And if you are not part of the What If Project yet, you can go join at yourbestmanager.com/what if, and you can sign up there. As well, I'll talk about this at the end, but through this webinar, I'm going to be giving somebody a free access to my new leadership development program that I'm building called Different. And if you've been watching any of the videos I've been doing over the past 7 days, you will know that I've been recruiting founding members for this 8-week leadership development program I'm building out. I will talk about that at the end of the webinar because you didn't come here to hear a sales pitch. You came here to talk about managing performance. And so I don't want to ruin it with that. But there's one person who is watching. Oh, hey, Patricia, it's working. There's one person who's watching the webinar today that will win free access into the Different program. And so to do that, it's really simple. All you have to do is react to. Because I think I can see this, react to this video on Facebook. So if you go to my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Jamie Newman YBM, you will see that I'm live streaming this right now. And I decided last minute to do this, but that's how you can enter to win free access into the Different program. Is you can like or heart or laugh or anger or wow on this, and I will be picking somebody to win free access to the Different program. And again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just go do it anyway. It enters, and then you'll find out a little bit later. Outside of that, I guess we should get started. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about performance management, how to address it, how to diagnose it. And before we jump into that, though, I want to just give a quick overview of who I am. I was going to have a picture of me up, but I didn't get it in time dealing with all this technical stuff. So if you're on Facebook, you can see my face. But my name is Jamie. I'm the founder of yourbestmanager.com and the host of the Your Best Manager podcast, which is available on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. And I'm not here to start talking about how cool my business is, but I wanted to tell you just a story about me as a manager when I was first starting out. So I would have become a first-time manager, would have probably been 6 years ago. And 6 years ago, I had already been a manager at McDonald's. I'm not counting that. So you could probably give another 3-4 years of management experience to me. But when I started out, I thought I was really good. And because in my head, I knew exactly what I should be doing as a manager. I knew what it took to build relationships. I knew what it took to care about people, to monitor performance. I knew how to explain things. I was a good trainer. And so when I got promoted into management, looking back at my training experience and looking back at my experience at McDonald's, I was like, I'm going to make a great leader. And so when I started, I had 2 recruiters that reported to me, and a little bit later, I got a third. And so at one point in time, I was managing 3 different recruiters. And if you were to fast forward 9 months, the first employee that I hired, sorry, it would have been the second employee that I hired on my team, I had to terminate. The first one that I hired pretty much at one point just stopped showing up to work. And then the last one quit a couple days after I put them on a performance improvement plan. So as you can tell from that, three different reasons for leaving, but neither of them reflect me being a very good manager. And so I got a harsh reality 9 months in that, hey, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. But since then, I've received a lot of very tough feedback, even to a point where I remember being taken out for breakfast by a couple senior managers. And I was told, hey, Jamie, you're not well liked. People don't want to work for you. And that was hard, but I started to make changes as a result of that. Part of that out of frustration, but the big change that I started making was I started just paying attention and surrounding myself with those better people, those senior managers. But more importantly, because obviously in order to get that feedback, I had to have them in my life, I started listening to them. And I started studying leadership, and I started reading more books. I started listening to podcasts. I started volunteering for different opportunities, taking risks, asking more questions, reaching out to people that were either my clients with a lot of management experience, or internally some of the senior managers. And just like the what if project that I'm running right now, which the premise of that is like, what if all managers everywhere did just one small thing to become not necessarily just better, but different? I started actually making small, minuscule changes. And in the end, the snowball effect took over. And um, I, so if you remember, I just said that at 9 months, I'd lost the first three employees that worked for me. And fast forward an extra 3 months after that, and I actually received recognition as the Rookie of the Year salesperson for Canada, despite losing three people. That's how much change happened in just 3 months. My business and my team transformed as a result of some very tough feedback I received and as a result of some failure I had on my team. Then the following year, I received recognition as the top account manager within our operation. And the year after that, I hit the top sales milestone within our company, which involved bringing in me and my team. And if you can see in this picture, it's not one person rolling the snowball, it is a team. But my team brought in over $1 million in gross profit into our organization in a year. So ultimately, I had turned things around and found success. And a lot of that had to do with the way I managed performance. That being said, the journey doesn't end. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've arrived. And just as this quote by Greg Anderson, focus on the journey, not the destination. Joy is not found in finishing an activity, but in doing it. It's not about getting perfect. It's about making those changes and enjoying the changes that you make along the way. And I have no idea who Greg Anderson is, by the way. If you know who Greg is, you should tell me, maybe comment it or put it in a chat. I'm not live on Facebook. Patricia just told me I'm not live on Facebook. It says I'm live. I don't know what we'll do. It's okay. Anyway, so yeah, so I ultimately it's still a journey, and I haven't figured this all out. And a big disclaimer here with the entire What If project, with the different program, you're not going to obtain perfection, but small changes can turn into some pretty giant snowballs. And there's also, I mean, there's a difference between knowing what you should do and doing what you should do. And that's where I think I struggled at the beginning, and that's still something I struggle with today. Is sometimes I know in my head what I should be doing as a manager, but I don't always execute on it. And so the big thing that I learned that really started to make large changes was I allowed other people to give me feedback, even when it hurt, and even when I didn't want to receive that. And so the message there is, and why I'm telling you all this about me and wasting some of your time. We've been 10 minutes talking about this. I'm telling you this because I've been there. I've been in a situation where I did not manage performance very well. I've faced the same struggles. I continue to face the same struggles on some level as a manager even today. And that's okay, because the whole goal here is to continue moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, you're probably moving backward. And one of the things that I continue to do today is surround myself with people better than I am, so that I can continue to improve, because you can't obtain perfection. And one of the things that I decided to do is when I launched this business, I launched it including a podcast where I interview leadership experts, like the world's top leadership experts, because I know if I'm going to teach this stuff, I need to be surrounded with people who are farther ahead than I am, so that I can lean on their wisdom and so that I can learn while I'm teaching everyone else. So just a little message there. And with all that said, let's jump into the meat of everything, and we'll go from there. So the 3 reasons why employees underperform and how to correct behavior to increase productivity. So the 3 reasons are I don't know, or the employee doesn't know, the employee doesn't care, or the employee isn't capable. And what we're going to do is, I've just obviously listed out the reasons. I'm going to walk through each of those reasons. Then I'm going to share how you can diagnose them. And then finally, I'll talk about how you can address those issues if you're facing them with your team. And so the first one is, sometimes your employees don't know. They're underperforming because they don't actually know what to do, how to do it, or when to do it. It's ignorance. And this one's hard, but I'll give you a funny example that happened the other day. So right now we're in a new subdivision, and so we don't have a fence put up in our backyard. We've got grass down, but we don't have a fence. And so the other day, our neighbor actually had his door to his back door open. They weren't home. I'm not sure why their door was open. At least I don't think they were home. But Jake, my 4-year-old, was in the backyard. He saw the open door, so he just went and decided to go in this neighbor's house. Didn't ask anybody, and again, the owners weren't even home. And so I was upset, because now that's not a huge hardcore performance thing, but I was bothered that, hey, he should know that you don't go in other people's houses when they're not home. That's common sense. But as I said before, common sense to me isn't necessarily common sense to everybody else. And in the same way, sometimes you may think that it makes sense for an employee to just do stuff, maybe because you told them once, or maybe because it's just common sense. And they may not do it because they don't know. And Jake, as a 4-year-old, has not played in the backyard long enough without a fence. No one's ever told him you don't just go into strangers' houses. And so how could I get upset about something I haven't actually taught him or told him not to do yet? So there's an example of that. But a couple other examples of the don't know would be maybe you've made a bad hire. Maybe you hired someone without validating their experience, and now they're working for you, and you think that they know because their resume said something, or because they answered some good questions in the interview, or the reference said they were good. But now that they're actually working for you, they don't actually know what to do. So that could be contributing to negative performance. Another one, and this one's probably the biggest, and this is the one that we'll really talk about, is poor communication from the manager. Sometimes the manager, you haven't actually effectively communicated what the employee should be doing. So they don't know because you haven't actually told them. Or if you told them, you didn't ensure there was comprehension. And we'll talk about that later on. Another one could be sometimes that employees are afraid to ask questions. So sometimes they don't know because when they get stuck, they're not actually asking for help. They're not actually asking what the right answer is. And so their performance drops because although they don't know, they're not actually reaching out to get the answers. Another one kind of obvious is if it's the first time an employee is doing something, or if they're lacking experience. So you've hired a salesperson, you think they've got sales experience, you put them on the road for the first time, but you realize they've never done it by themselves. So they don't have the experience, and thus they don't actually know what to do. And so the performance drops. And so that would be the don't know. Reason number one, employees sometimes don't know. Reason number two is sometimes employees don't care. And this goes down to the, I'll say WIFM, which is WIIFM. It's what's in it for me. An employee, we all ultimately are often asking this selfishly in everything we do. What's in it for me? Why should I work hard? And sometimes your employees aren't going to know what's in it for them. And so that'd be the obvious, where it's just like, I don't know why I would do this, so I'm going to have a bad attitude, or I'm not going to work very hard. But often this actually shows up a lot more subtly, where it could be fear of making mistakes. I'm not going to do X because I'm afraid of making a mistake. Performance drops. Or I'm not going to do X because I'm afraid of what people will think. Sales is a great example of this. The fear of cold calling is could be an I don't care enough to pick up the phone, get outside of my comfort zone, and make a phone call to a prospect because I'm afraid of rejection or it's outside of my comfort zone. So sometimes the don't care is don't care enough to take a risk. And then sometimes it's just being tired and lazy. I don't care enough to get off the couch, or I don't care enough to get out of my chair. I don't care enough to work those extra 5 minutes to get the job done. And so that tired and lazy, when it's 5 o'clock at the end of the day, that employee's out the door and their performance drops, even though an extra 10 minutes could have made the world of a difference. It's because they don't care. And then another one would be sometimes they don't actually need the job. Sometimes employees, now this goes back to the entitlement, but sometimes people don't need to do well. Sometimes they've got, and maybe this sounds awful, but sometimes employees are making enough money through either their household income, or maybe they had a lot of money to begin with, and they don't actually need the job. And so there's not a lot of financial incentive for them to perform at a level where they're not going to be fired. It still goes back to what's in it for me, because money isn't the way you motivate people like that, but sometimes that's how it could show up. And the last thing, just to kind of put this in perspective, I forget the guy's name, but I watched I guess it was an interview, one of those live TV interviews where there's people in the audience. And so someone from the audience asked this guy to help with procrastination. And his response was, procrastination doesn't exist. What you're talking about is sometimes you just don't want things bad enough. And what he said was, if I told you that I want you to meet me at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning and I will give you $100,000, you're not going to procrastinate. You're going to show up because it's worth it to you. And so anytime that you're procrastinating, really what you're saying is the result of the work that I'm going to put in isn't worth the reward. And that's really what I'm talking about here when it comes to don't care, which you'll see as we get into how do you diagnose and then how do you address it. The last reason number 3 of why employees underperform is because sometimes they aren't actually capable. And I guess the big question here, the rhetorical question would be, what often happens when someone wants to do well, but isn't actually capable of doing well? Like, what do you do in those situations? And most of the time, at least in my experience, we brush it under the rug, or we step in and help a little bit too much, or we hope that they'll eventually figure it out rather than having the tough conversation. And obviously that's not what I'm going to suggest, but this one's real and this one's a difficult one. But to give some examples of a lack of capabilities, sales could be one of them. In order to go into sales, and I spent a lot of time in sales where you're facing clients, where you're doing cold calls, there's a little bit of personality you need to actually do that. Some people don't have that. Now, part of that is a lack of interest in it, but some people just aren't good salespeople. I mean, you've probably talked to some of those customer service people that just sound like they hate their job. And you're like, why would I ever come back to this restaurant, or why would I ever use this service again? And it's not necessarily because they don't want to be good, but sometimes they just don't have what it, like they're just not good at it. And that's okay. So sales is an example. Design would be an example. I mean, if you're going to do any sort of design, you need to have that eye for what looks good, whether that's graphic design, interior design, doesn't matter. Some people don't have it. And it doesn't matter how hard they work, or how hard or how much they want to do well. Sometimes they just can't actually do it. Another one would be math. Some people struggle with math. And so if you're in something like accounting and you have dyslexia, or if you're in something where you need to be crunching a lot of numbers all day, sometimes you're just going to struggle because you're not good enough at it. And then there's the whole customer service thing. Some people can't handle the pressure. They're not capable of working on many things at once in a chaotic environment. Some people are better at working alone and behind the scenes. And so sometimes people aren't very good at that. And then, of course, physical labor. I mean, if you've got heavy lifting required in your job, sometimes that is going to result in poor performance if someone can't actually do heavy lifting. If they're not physically in enough shape to do the heavy lifting, they're going to struggle with performance, right? So makes sense. And then the last one will be their interests. Sometimes people aren't interested, and therefore they're not going to develop the skills required to be good at the job. And that goes back to don't care, which is how I'm going to transition into, okay, great. So there's 3 reasons why employees underperform. They don't know, they don't care, or they aren't capable. But the question is, Which reason is it? And how do you know? So it could be that your employee doesn't know, doesn't care, and isn't capable. It could be all three of those things. Or it could look like they don't care, but really they don't know. And their fear of looking like they don't know comes across as a lack of desire. Or they may look like they don't know when in their head they know what to do, but they're not capable. And so, an example of that would be a designer. They may know in their head what it should look like when they design, but they're actually not capable. And so, how do you know which one it is? Is it capabilities or a lack of knowledge? Did the designer not know what was expected, or were they just not capable of designing what needed to be designed? Right. And I mean, there's a big danger as well with oh, where did I go? I just lost my thing. Not sure how that happened. There it is. Sorry about that. Where was I? Yeah. Anyway, so there's a danger of misdiagnosing if you get the wrong reason, because I mean, what happens when you keep telling someone how to do something that they already know how to do? I mean, what happens when you repeatedly say, "No, do it this way. No, do it this way," when they already know in their head, and maybe they just don't care. Maybe they just don't want to do it, or maybe they're not capable. What happens in those situations? Well, people get frustrated, employees get frustrated, managers get frustrated because you're telling them something they already know. You've misdiagnosed why they're not performing, and you're offering the wrong solution. And so, what do you do about it? Well, what you do to diagnose is step one would be validate. Whatever expectation you have, get the employee to actually teach it back to you. So start with the head knowledge. If they can get whatever performance expectation or process is required, if they can get that in their head as knowledge, then they know what to do. Which, if you can get there, if you can validate by saying, "Hey, can you teach back what's expected, or can you tell me what you're about to do, or can you tell me your understanding of this?" If you can validate that as step one, then you've just eliminated the "I don't know" excuse. And if they can't answer that, like if you say, "Hey, can you explain how you do this?" and they can't explain it to you, guess what? You've just diagnosed. You've got an employee who doesn't know. Now, they may also not care and they may also not be capable, but that's where you're going to start. You've just diagnosed that you have an employee that is underperforming because they don't actually know what to do, when to do it, or how to do it. So that's the first thing that you want to validate. Um, the the other side of this would be just be curious and be inquisitive. So you just want to be careful in the validation stage that you don't want to lead people to the answer because you're wanting to figure out if they actually know what to do. So sometimes it can be tempting, and I do this with my 4-year-old, but I'll be like, "Are you allowed to throw rocks?" And he'll be like, "No, no." And so I'm like, he doesn't know because I haven't told him he can't throw rocks yet. But I'm leading him to the answer I want to give, which gives me a false confidence that they know what they're doing. So step one is validate, but be careful that you are being inquisitive, asking questions, and not leading. Lastly, just a word of caution here, and I already mentioned this. Just because, and actually, I didn't mention this, just because they say they don't know doesn't mean that they don't actually know. So that's why you're not going to just stop and say, "All right, we know exactly what it is. This person doesn't know what to do." You're going to keep going through the next two steps. But step one is validate. Because yeah, it would be scary if you have someone who says, "I don't know what to do," when in reality they really actually do know what to do. And I've had that as well. Step two is test. And again, I'm going to apologize. It's already 1:31 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Yeah, I started late and didn't do a good job of obviously being prepared for this. So my apologies, but I'm going to keep rolling. So step two is test. And what you want to do here is you want to think of it as watching them do the job. So as a coach. And on Monday's podcast episode, which was episode 85, I was talking about coaching. So you want to give encouragement, give support, give reminders, praise them for small things, and keep your employee focused on like having fun and just smiling, or just being the person that they need to be. You don't want to be teaching in the test phase. So what you want to do is you want to watch the employee do the job. You want to be there as a coach, but you want to be watching and testing are they actually, in this case, capable of doing the job? Do they know what they're doing? They've already told me they know what to do in their head. Now you want to watch as a coach, not a trainer, and watch them actually perform the work. The other thing you can do in testing would be give them a literal test, like ask them questions. Remember, you may have hired someone without knowledge. Even though it said it on their resume, maybe you've got someone who's an employee of yours, and now what you want to do is you want to ask them questions like, all right, tell me what you do in this situation, or tell me why you think that, or tell me what you know about X. So it's almost like taking the first step, validate, and taking it a little bit further to actually test their knowledge. It's like, okay, you know what's expected. Tell me about this, or answer me this. So it's like almost extending those questions to test them. And then the last thing you can do to diagnose would be put someone on a performance improvement plan, which is also a way to address capabilities, like I'll talk about in a few minutes. But if you give someone specific metrics that they need to hit in order to improve performance, you're going to find out very quickly their capabilities. Because again, you've already determined in their head that they know what to do. Now you want to test them, and a performance improvement plan can be a test. Of course, there's different times where that's a good idea, different times where that's not a good idea, but that would be a third option. So shadow them actually doing the job, give them a literal test, maybe ask more questions, or maybe a written test or a computer test to ensure that they're actually capable. And then if you need to, put them on a performance plan so that they actually have to do what they said in their head they know to do. And if they can perform those tasks, you've diagnosed that they know what to do. They are capable of doing it, which means they must not care. And so for step 3, you've got an employee who's demonstrated knowledge. They've shown you they're capable, which means that a lack of performance has to be based on a lack of desire. They don't care. And this is where you start to understand in this step why they don't care before you actually address it. Because you're still actually in diagnosis mode. It'd be very easy to, all right, I've eliminated 1 that they don't know. I've eliminated 2 that they're not capable. They don't care. But there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to addressing someone who doesn't care. So you want to diagnose this reason a little bit further. As easy as it would be to make a negative assumption, the principle here is seek to understand. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is, and this is why I say shadow, would be to continue that shoulder-to-shoulder type leadership, like literally where you're shoulder to shoulder with them. And what you want to do is you want to work alongside them. You want to show them how it's done by doing it with them. You want to show them that they are capable of performing and reinforce them. But you really want to start building authentic relationships where you are on the front lines with them, showing them how, learning about them, facing the challenges with them, so that you have a relationship, which is going to be necessary if you're going to try and figure out why they don't care. The other thing that I'm going to say here is continue to be inquisitive and ask questions through your shoulder-to-shoulder leadership, where you're working alongside, you're maybe out on the production floor or you're out in the office with them. You just ask little questions like, hey, how important is this job to you? Or why did you apply for this job in the first place? Like what got you started here? Why did you want to work here? Or even more blunt, what do you think's holding you back from being great? Like what's in your way? Obviously we've got some performance issues, but like what's in your way? And what you want to do is you almost want to treat this like casual conversation while shoulder to shoulder, or a coffee shop conversation afterwards. So I wouldn't bring them into your office and be like, hey, it seems like you don't care. But you'd want to bring them maybe out to grab a coffee and ask those types of questions like, why do you do what you do? Why do you come to work each day? Why is this job important to you? So at this point, we've determined that your employees are not performing because of one of 3 reasons. They either don't know what to do, they don't care about the work, they don't care to perform, or they're not capable. But the question is, once you've diagnosed that, what do you do about it? Like, how do you actually correct that behavior and increase your team's productivity? And so the first thing I'm going to say is start with why. I'm not referring to Simon Sinek's book, but what I want you to think of is almost every reason why someone wouldn't care or will not have the desire to perform a certain task can start to be addressed with why. But it shows up different for each person. So the person who doesn't know, you almost want to ask, hey, how important is it to figure out what you need to be doing, because there's going to be elements of not caring in all of this. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's first think about, you've got the person who they don't know what to do. So find out why it would be important for them to find out what to do. Because let's take communication. Maybe you haven't communicated clearly, but communication is two-way. Your employee has a responsibility to understand the job before they leave your office. And so you want to ask that question. You want to start with why, being like, why would you want to know? Like, why is it important to know how to do your job in your head? Or even that employee that was hired that didn't actually have the experience. Hey, how important is it for you to get the experience so that you can actually perform well? Like, why? And if they're not capable, if you found out through the diagnosis that there's an employee who just, they're not good, they're not getting it, your question would be, how important is it to figure out? Like, how important is it for you to get better, to hone your skill, to practice, to study, to become great? You're a bad designer right now, but why do you want to be a designer? And if you want to be a designer bad enough, what are you going to do about it? So this is almost where you're putting the ownership on the candidate side and starting with what is going to drive them to put in the effort to gain the knowledge if they don't know, or to gain the skills if they aren't capable. And the last one, if you find out an employee doesn't care, you just want to start with the question, why are you actually here? You know what to do, you know how to do it, you're good at it, but you're not doing it. So like, why are you actually here? Point blank. And from there, what you want to do is you want to go into some form of goal setting. And this is something you should do regardless. So if you've already set goals, you want to come back to these goals. If you haven't set goals, you want to start setting goals, because you will always struggle with employee motivation if you cannot find the correlation between if you cannot help your employees find the correlation between their performance at work and personal achievement. So this is about inspiring change now. You understand why a little bit, but now you want to take their why and translate that into something where their performance can contribute to personal achievement. And so that performance has to be has to happen on both sides. I mean, you're not going to be able to just force somebody to get better just by you communicating better. They're going to have to actually change their behaviors. And this comes back to the what's in it for me. And so what you want to do is you want to sit down and set goals. Be like, well, okay, so here's why. You just told me why you want to be in this job, why it's important to you. Here's what happens if you achieve performance. Now, what does that mean for you? What do you actually want to accomplish? You want to get promoted? Here's how you get promoted. Performance. You want to gain more experience on the road. Well, here's how you earn that right and that responsibility. And so you set goals so that when the employee starts thinking about work, they start thinking about, hey, if I perform well, I get stuff, or I get whatever it is that I want. So you start with the why, and then you correlate it to the performance at work. Hopefully that makes sense, because your goal setting becomes your purpose. All right. Now, for the one who doesn't know, I'm just going to go into some ways that you can address specifically with them. So to the employee that doesn't know what to do, how to do it, or when to do it, you've fully diagnosed exactly where they're at. You understand why they want to know. You understand their goals. You've got something purpose behind it. So what do you need to do? Well, as a manager, you need to teach them. You need to find out where their lack of knowledge and experience comes from, and you need to make a decision to give them that knowledge or the experience that they're missing. Because you either give them the knowledge or point them in the direction to find the knowledge, or one of two things happens. They're going to quit because they don't know what to do, and eventually they're going to be so afraid of underperforming, they're going to quit and go find something they're good at, or they're going to be terminated because a lack of performance eventually is not going to be acceptable. And so that's step one. The person doesn't know, you got to teach them. And the way you do that, and I recently talked about this on the podcast, but you want to do a learn, shadow, do, teach model. And so the learn would be tell them what to do and why to do it. The shadow would be show them how, let them shadow you do it properly. The do would be watch them actually do it and help them do it for the first time. And teach would be the teach back, where you're looking at improved results over a period of time. And after that, you want to make sure that you are setting expectations, because as I said, common sense isn't common sense. And so some of the time your team is not performing because you haven't actually set expectations. So it's not just about teaching, although you want to teach your expectations, but you need to actually set expectations to begin with. And then you want to habitually verify instruction. That's the biggest change that you can make, is habitually verify instruction. When you give instruction to somebody, before that person leaves your desk or leaves your office or goes to do whatever you've asked them to do, get them to teach back to you and verify their comprehension of that. Be like, all right, before you leave, what are you doing? All right, you got this? All right, tell me what this looks like. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. I mean, eventually you won't have to do that. You're only doing that with an underperformer, remember. But that little bit of habitual verification can dramatically change team performance, because when they can't teach it back to you, you know that you've got a responsibility to further communicate what's expected. And then, of course, put ownership on the development, ownership of the development on the employee themselves. So recommend some books that they should read and hold them accountable to read them, or podcasts, or get them some formal training. But it's not all about you. You've got an employee who's underperforming. You can do things as a manager to teach, and the employee needs to do things as well to learn. So that's what you do with the employee who doesn't know. To the one who is not capable of performing, you've got 3 options with this person. If they're not capable, they either need to improve, they need to change roles, or they need to leave your company. And you need, as the manager, to make that clear. If performance isn't happening because although the person knows what to do, they just aren't able to do it, you need to tell them, hey, you need to start performing. Or we need to find you a different role internally if it's available. And you've got a responsibility to help that person get into a position of success if you can. Or you need to ask them to leave. And that's where a performance improvement plan can really come in handy, because it's like, if they decide that they want to improve, and you still need to have all right, well, I need to see improvement or else. And a performance improvement plan can help them get clear on what's expected, but also if change doesn't happen, it gives you a good reason to ask them to leave. Now, if they want to improve, you've got to ask them how bad they want it. This goes back to the what if and the desire, because is the lack of capabilities just a lack of care? Sometimes people aren't capable because they don't care enough. And so if the employee says they want to improve, you need to ask them how bad they want to improve and what they're willing to do about it. Right? Now, if they change roles, that's another option. That would be strengths-based leadership. And the last thing I'll say on this is sometimes you have to ask them to leave. And this is the toughest one that I always found as a manager, because sometimes I really like people that aren't good at their job. But you have to remember that it's merciful and it's the right thing to do for the other person sometimes to terminate them. Because if they're not going to be successful in the role you have them in, the longer you keep them there, the more that you are contributing to their lack of satisfaction in their job. Because there's nobody who's at the bottom of the list, the bottom of the batting order, who doesn't want to go up, who's happy there. It just doesn't happen. People don't like knowing that they're underperforming. And so by you allowing someone to continue to try and do things they're just not going to do, they're just not going to get good at, that's not a good thing. It's more merciful to say, dude or dudette, and I wouldn't say it so casually, go do something you're going to be great at. Here's where your strengths are. I wish we had an opportunity internally, but you need to leave the organization. I'm going to help you out with that, right? So that's the last thing there. And then what do you do with the one who doesn't care? This one's kind of fun, although it's really hard, but it's super easy. So you got 2 options, up or out. And you need to actually have that conversation. And now that you've diagnosed, and now that you've done shoulder-to-shoulder leadership, where you've actually started building a relationship where you can be this honest with them, you can pull them into your office or grab them for a cup of coffee and say, dude, you know what to do. You're good at it. You know what to do, and you are capable of doing it. So the only reason I can come up with of why you're not meeting your expectations or why you're not finding success is because you don't want to be here. So here are your options. You need to improve, or you need to leave. But I want to help you improve because I want you here, and I want you to achieve all these goals that we started setting. And so what you want to do is you want to put this in their hands. You want to ask them to make a decision. So, hey, you know where you stand. You know what could happen if you performed well. What decision are you going to make? And so you want to make sure that this threat is clear. It is ultimately a threat, but you want to make it their decision, not yours. You want to ask them to decide, are they willing to put in the effort to improve performance? Because that's all it takes for the one who doesn't care to turn it around. And ultimately, low performance isn't helping anyone. So you want to ask your employee, how bad do you want those goals that we talked about? And you want to ask for the real reason as well. So there could be underlying issues where maybe there's a relationship. Maybe they don't care because they don't like you as their manager, or maybe they don't like the company, or maybe there's a relationship issue going on in the workplace or even outside that's contributing for their lack of desire at work. You want to ask for a real reason. And the only way you're going to get that real reason is if you have a relationship. And that's why shoulder to shoulder leadership is so important. So you want to ask for that real reason. And then you want to say, is the achievement of those goals we set, is the reason why you're here, is high performance worth addressing those issues? Is it worth addressing that issue with the boss you don't like? Or is it worth addressing those issues with the company? Or is it worth getting help with some of your personal relationships? Is it worth stepping outside of your comfort zone so that you can get back on track, perform well here, and achieve your goals? Up or out? Ultimately, a lack of care is toxic. This is the worst one to have. If someone doesn't want to be in your company, or doesn't want to be on your team, or doesn't want to achieve results, that's awful, because that can rally similar behaviors from people around you. And ultimately it leaves potential on the table, because someone who knows what to do and is good at it, but just won't perform because they don't want to do it, you can't allow that as a leader, because you're leaving potential and opportunity on the table. It's your job as a leader to help people reach their potential. And so you've got to address the issues where someone doesn't care about what they're doing so that they can actually do that. And so what if you tick them off and they end up leaving your company? What other option do you have? To have someone be mediocre the entire time they're under your command? What type of an impact are you having by allowing that, right? So ultimately, what you're wanting to do in all three of these cases is make it about the other person's best interest, not about yours. And if you can tie it to their performance, tie their performance to personal achievement and goals, you are going to have an opportunity to make significant change, and it's going to be a whole lot easier to address those tough conversations. We are way over time, so I apologize for that. I do have a couple quick additional suggestions. First of all, conversations are hard. Recognize that. Recognize that in order for you to be an effective leader, you need to be willing to step outside of your own comfort zone. So walk in knowing that, but walk in thinking about the long-term benefit of building a relationship through having a tough conversation. So recognize they're hard, but recognize the opportunity. That's suggestion one. Suggestion two is one-on-one meetings are critical. If you are regularly having one-on-one meetings with your team, then performance should be regularly talked about, which means that it won't get bad enough where all of a sudden you have to address it, because you'll be addressing it week in and week out. And through those, you'll be building relationships that allow you to have more candid conversations and make a bigger impact. And the other thing I would say is weekly team communication, whether that's through a weekly staff meeting, a Monday morning meeting, a Friday wrap-up meeting, some sort of weekly team communication is your opportunity to assess the team as a whole and then determine where you need to spend your time so you can make the biggest impact possible as a leader. All right. But the problem is these conversations take time. One-on-ones take time. Goal setting takes time. And it's hard. Everything I'm talking about doesn't make it necessarily easy. We've got a business to run. To think about taking one of your employees out for lunch or out for a coffee to address things, to think about the burden of trying to help diagnose what's actually going on, that takes time, and it also takes accountability. Because I know for me, I procrastinate on these conversations. I know for me, I hope, well, maybe they'll have a better attitude tomorrow, or maybe they'll figure it out tomorrow, or maybe it's just a bad day. And so the big challenge with this entire performance thing is not having the time to do it properly, and not having the accountability behind you to encourage and support and coach you to actually do what you already know in your head you should be doing, which is diagnosing why and addressing the reasons for poor performance so you can create a highly productive team. And so productivity and time management are only one component of this. And the difference I found for me, if you go back to that story I shared at the beginning, is the big difference is I chose to listen to the advice from the people I chose to surround myself with. And so the two big things that if you want to overcome this challenge of lack of time and lack of accountability is, first of all, you need to develop yourself. You need to get better at productivity and time management. But you need to have someone help you. You need to have a mentor, or you need to have a coach. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to share one of those opportunities. And I already referenced this at the beginning of today's webinar, because this is why I created the different program. And this is why I created the What If project, which I'll tell you about right here, is to battle that time issue and battle that accountability issue. The time side, because there's small changes, and the accountability issue because I've got a program to actually help provide that support. So I'll do Q&A in a minute, but I've got one final thing that I want to talk about, which is that different program. So what I'm saying is, don't do it alone. Don't work harder, but pursue different. So the What If project is about small changes, and you can register for that at yourbestmanager.com/whatif. And the different program is about the actual results. I'll give the knowledge, the tips I give through the What If project, but the actual application and accountability that drives real results, that real change, that true snowball effect, that comes through having someone help you with it. And that's one option, is the different program that I've put together. And so the question is, what if all it took to transform your team and business, your career and your influence, was just 8 weeks of focus, and that was it? And so the different program that I've talked about is it's 8 weeks of focused development with me. And so one of the results of the program is to actually track and actually increase your team's overall performance. So one of the things I'll be doing at the beginning of this program is getting some sort of a pulse check on team performance for each of the managers that's in the program, so that we can compare it to the actual results of increased performance just 8 weeks later, which is really cool. But the missing component to all of this that I talked about today, the missing component to just being able to diagnose and address poor behavior is, well, sometimes you know what to do in your head, or maybe you have an employee like this. You know what to do in your head. You are capable of doing what you know to do. You want to do it. You have desire to get better, but sometimes performance just still isn't there. So, like, what do you do if you have an employee who knows what to do, wants to do it, wants to do well, and they've got the capabilities, but they're not performing? What do you do in that situation when it's none of the three reasons? Well, that's a gift if you're a good leader. And what that means is, it's your opportunity. Like, the solution is for you to put on the trainer hat and put on the coach hat. And so as a trainer, you want to continually be increasing knowledge and the capabilities of your employees. Just because someone knows what to do doesn't mean they know everything about what to do. And so you want to be a trainer and continually show people how to go further, how to do more, how to accomplish more. So you want to be a trainer, but you also want to be a coach. And as I referenced before, and as I talked about on the Monday podcast, a coach, this is a definition from McDonald's, go figure. A coach provides encouragement and support. They answer questions and they remind them of what they should be doing. So they make minor tweaks. This isn't training, this is coaching. They make minor tweaks while they're doing it. They build them up. They affirm them through praise. They affirm the positive behaviors. They reinforce the positive behaviors, and they keep them centered on what's truly important, by reminding the customer service person to smile, or by reminding the fellow manager to trust his gut when making decisions, or by reminding the laborer to have fun and enjoy what they're doing, right? So the coach does all of those things. The trainer gives the knowledge. The coach helps the person reach their potential. You remove that coach, that accountability, that mentorship, those reminders, performance is going to suffer, because there's nobody helping the person be better aside from their own self-will, which is good, but it's limited, right? And so that's what this different program is about, because you watching this are likely there right now. I don't know why on earth you would want to watch a webinar about performance management if you didn't want to improve performance. So, I mean, now you know what to do if you didn't before, but you probably already know what to do. You know that when there's a performance issue, you need to address it. So you know what to do in your head. You're capable. Everyone's capable of addressing performance. I just gave super actionable tips of how to diagnose it and then how to have those conversations. And yeah, they're uncomfortable, but you can do it. So you know what to do, and you're capable of doing it, and you want to do it. You're here to learn how to be a better manager, and you're learning about performance management because you want to manage your team better. And through this webinar, I've given you the training on how to do that, but through this new program, I dive deep into the content of performance management. And then I provide the coaching, I provide the accountability, I provide the encouragement, I provide the tools, the support, and the reminders so that actual results can happen. And so you've got an opportunity, if you're watching this, to become a founding member today. And whether you're watching this on Facebook, whether you're watching the replay on Facebook, or whether you're watching the replay on YouTube, or wherever you're watching right now, you can do this. Now, this program is going to be $997. $997 is what it is going to cost once it goes live. I'm building it right now. It's not actually launching for another month and a half to 2 months-ish. And so through this launch period, it's $300. But through the What If project, I've been putting it down every day. It's been going up by $10. And so it's June 7th today. It's the 7th day of the What If project, which means it is $70 today. However, because you're watching this webinar, it's available for $25. Which is the cheapest it will be from here on out. It was $10 the first day, and I know some of you picked that up on the first day and got the $10. But if you're watching right now, you can get access to a $997 program for just $25. I mean, there are some books that cost $25. There are webinars like this one that cost $25. So if you're interested in making a small investment in yourself, where am I? Oops. Yeah, if you're interested in making a small investment in yourself, this is a no-lose opportunity. And there's a website you can go. There's a button on the webinar page, but if you go to yourbestmanager.com/discount25, you can register there. So yeah, if you lead a team of managers as well, so if you're not just a manager, but you have managers on your team, or soon to be managers, this might be a good day for you to sign up a few team members while it's only $25, because $75 gets you 3 memberships, which is kind of cool, which is, again, only $5 more than what it costs for one today outside of this webinar. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, I'm losing my voice. This is what happens when you aren't ready to go, and you don't get your water before you start talking, and a sip again. But yeah, there's more info on the project on the program at yourbestmanager.com/discount25. And you can still register for the What If project, which has more information on different as well. The What If project is free, and that's at yourbestmanager.com/whatif. And so to find the winner, I actually can't check Facebook right now, which sucks. So just the way that my phone's set up, I can't actually see what's going on. So I cannot announce the winner of free access. But what I'm going to do is, after this is all done, I'm going to go through the likes and the hearts and all that stuff. I'm going to select a winner who has liked this Facebook Live feed. Patricia said I wasn't on Facebook Live. So if it didn't work or didn't show up, I'm sorry. I will find another way to give away free access. I'll just pick one of the people who registered for the event. But I thought it'd be cool to kind of get some interaction on this video. So I can't tell if you've already done that. I will pick the winner and I will announce it on tonight. I'm doing another day 7 of the What If project. So you can join me live tonight at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It's the last time I'm doing this at 8 p.m. before I do it a lot earlier in the day. And I will announce the winner of the free access to different during that live stream. So hopefully that makes sense. Other than that, I wanted to, where am I now? I wanted to open this up to Q&A. Stop screen sharing. There I am. All right. It was a lot of talking, and it was way too long. I was hoping this would be done in 30 minutes, and it was an hour. But it's the first time I'm doing it, so I guess that's okay. So I'd like to invite you, if you're on the chat, you can ask questions. Again, if you're on Facebook, I can't actually see them. So you can only ask a question if you're in the webinar, which is on YouTube. So if you register for the webinar, you can just hop in the chat, ask a question, and I will answer it. I do have a couple questions prepared as well. And then if you comment on Facebook, I'll just answer them later. I'll answer them in the live stream tonight. So you don't have to have your question this second. Because again, if I was more prepared, I'd probably have access to my Facebook feed right now, but I don't, obviously. So, but a couple questions would be, what do you do if it's just a bad attitude? And that's going to be difficult, but there is something to be said. If someone just has a bad attitude, there's something to be said for just monitoring it and not taking it necessarily super seriously right away. I'm sure some people may disagree with me on that, but if someone's coming into work and they've got a bad attitude, there's probably something going on. Now, I still think that you should set goals. I still think you should lead shoulder to shoulder, build that relationship, work on that. But if someone is going through something personally, whether it's a sick relative, whether they're maybe a new mom, or whether they're having relationship issues, and they're bringing a poor relationship into work, or a bad attitude into work, and you address it aggressively, it could hinder more than it helps. So I'd say monitor it, but build that relationship. And if it's persisting for days at a time or even weeks, that's the time where you go out for coffee and be like, dude, you're good. You're capable. For some reason, there's something not right, and I'm seeing a bit of an attitude. Do you notice this? Or do you not notice this? And having that honest conversation. So that's what I do with a bad attitude. But at the same time, you need to address behavior in real time. So a bad attitude shows up like, and I've had to deal with this myself. I've always had very open relationships with my employees where I'm like, hey, tell me anything, be blunt. But sometimes the line was crossed a little bit. And so I remember times where my employees didn't want to do something I asked them to do, and they would get aggressive in how they would respond to me, and they'd give me an attitude in front of everybody. Now, I'm not okay with that. That is a behavior that's unacceptable on my team. And so having a bad attitude that shows up just a little bit and isn't really hurting anyone, but you notice it, you can monitor that. But if there is bad behavior, a bad attitude that's leading to aggressive behaviors and leading to yelling, or like fighting or conflict, you've got to address that as the behavior. And so in those circumstances, I've always brought the person into my office and been like, hey, I'm all for honesty, but let me tell you how what you did impacted me. And so that's that little line there. Let me tell you how that impacted me, or can I tell you how what you did impacted me? That can go such a long way in informing people about how their attitude is translating into actions and behaviors. So there's 2 tips, I guess, for a bad attitude impacting performance. Monitor it, build the relationships so you can address and be a support and set those goals so that they can get realigned. But if there are negative actions, address them in real time, pull them into your office and say, can I tell you how what you just did impacted me and our team? That should be a good way. Another question that may have maybe there is, where was I? I should have written this down. How long does this performance change take? And the answer is it depends on what the performance issue is, but it's not going to happen overnight. So let's take, I'll go through each of them. Let's take your underperformer who doesn't know what to do. You're going to assess their level of knowledge as step one. You're going to validate it. If they don't know anything, it's going to take a long time, and you need to be okay with that. But if they just don't know a few things, you can change things instantly by communicating, right? If you ask someone to teach back to you, hey, tell me what, so you're in the validation stage. Hey, tell me what you think I expect from you. And they're like, I don't know. Well, there's your opportunity. You can tell them, hey, here's what I expect from you. You got it? Got it. Good. Performance improved immediately. right? So the timeline could change depending on what they know. If you need to send someone to a training program because they don't know anything about a software system that you're using, it's going to take a little bit longer. Now with the the I don't care, that can be pretty immediate. Because if you diagnose that someone doesn't care about what they do, you're having that conversation right away. Hey, it's up or out. Like, figure it out. Um, the goal setting will take time, no matter who you're working with. So if you're setting goals with somebody, you've got to allot some time to sit down, to brainstorm, to map out, to have those discussions. So you're probably looking at scheduling maybe even a Friday afternoon to do goal setting with your team. But that should as well have immediate impact, because then you just get to have reminder conversations being like, hey, this is what's important to you. This is what you told me is important to you. So let's stay focused on that. That's where you as a coach get to reinforce and get to come in and help people reach their potential, by just giving little reminders. So that's a work in progress, but you can see immediate change and immediate gratification. All right, Patricia asks, what if an employee is really great but lacks in certain areas? So again, depends on the area, I suppose. If they lack in a capability, it's going to be different than if they lack in knowledge. So if they lack in knowledge, you got to spend time teaching them, and you'll want to maybe put them on a plan to do that. And so you've got to also, this is a side note, but you've got to determine how much effort is worth the turnaround in performance. You've got to assess how big the issue is and how much time you're willing to put into it. Because I know for me, I've spent way too much time on people that never changed. And so you've got to make some decisions there in terms of the investment of time. But if someone's lacking in just one or two areas, I really think that's the power of shoulder to shoulder leadership. If you think they're capable of learning the knowledge, get out and do the work with them and show them how, because they're going to watch you do things and they're going to learn, and then you can actually coach them through actually doing the work. So that is the best way to address someone who's just got some small minor issues. A really good example of that, I'll use recruiting because that's what I did, but I still remember, we had a number of really good recruiters in our office, but I remember there was a recruiter who, probably one of our top recruiters, and at one point in time, we decided to sit down and I was going to show them how to do a candidate prep conversation. And so what they did is the great recruiter shadowed me do a candidate interview prep with a candidate. And through that like 30-minute conversation, that great employee gained additional knowledge. And I remember her being like, why don't you teach this more often? Just because although she was great, there were some certain areas she was lacking. And it all took was me showing her how to do it. Now you could take that a step further, and true shoulder to shoulder and true learn how to do teach would be like, all right, your turn. Now you do this one and I'll listen to you. So if it's a knowledge thing and you know that capabilities are there, that's what I would do. I would do shoulder to shoulder leadership, and I would show them how, have them shadow you, and then you shadow them. If it is a capabilities issue, so they're great at every aspect of the job, but there's one thing that they're just terrible at, chances are it's going to come down to practice. Again, it depends on what it is, but role plays are great. And the example I'll give here would be like cold calls. So there are some great people in my recruiting business that got into sales, and they're good at writing emails, and they're good at going on meetings, and they're good at building agendas, but they're not good at cold calls. They get nervous and they stutter, and you sometimes wonder, are you even capable of making a legit cold call? And the only opportunity for improvement there is just going to be practice. They just need to do it more. And so role plays and practice sessions and live calls, that one takes time. But if you do something over and over and over and over again, you're going to get good at it. Now, if you are not capable in a certain area that is mission critical, like as I was talking about design, it doesn't matter how many times you draw, your ideas are ugly. maybe you can take a course on it. But that may be an opportunity where it's like, all right, your performance has to improve. The next 3 designs you do have to captivate me. And I know that that's based on opinion, but if you're not bringing it, if our clients don't want to buy what you're doing, this isn't the right job for you. So I guess it depends. Hopefully that helps, Patricia. Where's I go? Was I answering something else? So yeah, yeah. So how long does it take? Answered that. What happens if they're really good but lack in certain areas? Answered that one too. Trying to think what other questions might come up when it comes to performance management. How do you know? Maybe how do you know when it's time to fire someone or when it's time to keep going? Judgment call based on your business for that. So there are times where you know things aren't working and it's like, well, should I give them another 2 weeks to improve or should I just make the decision today? That's going to depend on your business. So if negative performance is impacting your business and there is pain that is going to happen from not making a decision to terminate right away, make the decision to terminate right away. But I'm all for grace. I am all for giving people extra chances, opportunities, but you have to put a time limit on it. That's why performance improvement plans are good, because it gives an end date of when you need to improve. So if you're struggling with, is now the time to make a decision? There's a couple things you can assess. If someone really wants to improve, like the desire's there, and they are actively doing things to improve, start measuring the performance improvement. And if the performance is improving, even if it's minuscule, if it's improving, you believe that they will change, you don't need to terminate them, or you can keep monitoring it. But if the improvement stops or the desire stops, that's another reason that you should pull the string and make a decision to terminate. Other than that, yeah, if you've got any questions on Facebook, you can comment questions on Facebook. If you have any questions about the different program, just go over to yourbestmanager.com/, discount 25. If you go to yourbestmanager.com/today, it'll still take you there, but it's $70 there. So discount 25. If you go there, you can learn more about the program and register. If you want to register for the What If project, you can go to yourbestmanager.com/whatif. And again, to be entered to win to be entered to win free access to the different program, which I will add, if you've already paid for access to the different program, you can still win. I would just refund your money. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to join for the $25, but I don't know if I've won yet, go buy it for $25. And if you win, I'll refund you the $25. That's very simple, very simple to do. And so to enter that, go react on some level to the Facebook Live video if it's there. And if it's not there, I'll be picking a winner. And regardless, I will be announcing the winner of the free access to the different program on tonight's day 7 of What If at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again for your patience. And thanks for joining me today for this hour and 15-minute, 30-minute webinar. Again, my name is Jamie Newman, and I will catch you later.